It's so cute. I love the countdown.
Yeah.
Okay. The door is open. Once a few folks populate, I'll kick us off.
Hey.
And we'll have a nice little conversation among friends.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I should have said yes, ma'am. Yes, sir is like just my default.
It's the kids. It's you sound like Emerson. That's when I hear that. Oh my gosh.
Well, I've got teenagers, and so I'm picking up all the things.
That
I'm super
is
hip.
I am getting a crash course in Gen Alpha speak right now in real time. It is. And he'll give me lessons. His friends will give me lessons. If I say something, they're like, "Oh, Miss Brown, we don't say that anymore. We say this." I'm like, great. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Well, one thing that I do love about the South, and I'd count Virginia. Virginia counts as the South still, right?
Sure. Yeah, South adjacent.
Ish. Yeah, South adjacent is the whole speaking to adults with Miss or Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Like, especially for women, I think. So we've had this family that moved into our neighborhood from they'd been living in North Carolina. And whenever one of their kids comes over to our house, and they're speaking to Abby. So Miss Palmer, can I right? I just think it's so cute. And it's like that's something that should come back, I think. Not for like formal reasons, but just like it's like this little nod of respect. It's this little thing. Anyway, I think it's so cute.
I am a stickler for manners because I come from a long line of people who are really focused on that. And my dad was in the military in addition to being a police officer. So he is very much, sir, ma'am, please, thank you. All of the things. So it's hard to turn off. But we've got some folks who are starting to join us.
They don't want to hear us talk about manners? That's weird.
I mean, we could do a separate webinar just on manners. This is I have framed this externally when I've spoken to people as a conversation among friends, and that is very much the vibe. So welcome. This is a webinar, but it's also not, because we're just going to talk about, what's going on in our space through the lens of some trends that we're seeing that are a little bit interesting, some things that folks are leaning into that they could probably use a little bit of support with. And so this is going to be very informal. It's almost like a podcast in some ways, where we're a fly on the wall. We're not lecturing. We don't have a ton of slides. And if you have some feedback or input, please drop it into the chat. We would love to see it. We would love to bring you in at any point in the conversation, get your thoughts. And so before we dive into the questions, let's do some quick intros now that we're getting started. I am Angela Brown. I'm the Director of Marketing at Halda. I'm going to let Austen and Dallin introduce themselves.
Yeah. Well, I'm right under your video square, so I'll go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Austen Kelso. I am one of our product managers. So I work closely with our customers, the business, as well as our engineering team to figure out what are the best solutions to build and how will they solve your enrollment problems. I've been at Halda for, I guess it's 9 months. I was saying 6 months last week, and I thought, oh my gosh, we're already in September. And I come from a higher ed background. So had a stint at R&L, but spent most of my career actually working on campus in undergraduate admission at the University of Richmond. Go Spiders. Happy to be here.
Hey, everybody, I'm Dallin Palmer. I just want to point this out for both the current audience and anyone later on, if you are commenting on or recording from this. I put into the chat just now, if you disagree specifically with something that Austen might say, make sure to shout that out. I'm just kidding. Austen's one of my favorite people, and you will find that the three of us we just like each other. And I think both Angela and Austen are so smart and are such experts. I'm excited to chat here a little bit today. So I'm one of the co-founders here at Halda. I had my start in higher education and enrollment marketing way back in the day. Well, way back. I'm not that old. Lance, my other co-founder, who's way older than me. But we worked at a company called Zinch, for any of you OG enrollment people, which was acquired by Chegg. And that's where we got to know each other. I spent some time actually doing some international student recruitment back then. So taking schools around China, doing school tours. We had an online presence to do lead gen online for institutions. So anyway, had a lot of fun doing that. And then we've been building Halda ever since, well, really ever since then. So Lance and I and Spencer, we got this thing going in 2021. And today we won't tell you, we're not going to dive into the product so much, but a lot more of, I think, just the psychology, right, Angela? And like, how do you go about applying the best technologies in our current ecosystem?
Absolutely. I love that. And before we get to housekeeping, Dallin, I'd actually love for you to talk about where the title of this session came from, because it's a reference to one of our core values. And I'd love to share that with the folks who are listening.
Yeah. Do you want the long, medium, or short version?
We'll go short.
Short version. Okay. So
Please,
the short version is this. And I'm going to give a short-ish version. Many organizations, any organization that's been successful, is successful because they add value, right? They're helpful in some way, and that could be, a program or a major at a school. It could be a tech company. It could be an agency or a services firm. I don't care what it is, but like they found a way to add value to the world, and people bought it, and they were successful. Over time, sometimes what used to add value no longer adds value. And most organizations start to protect that, and they don't question it anymore. So seeking truth, it's a core value here at Halda. And what it means is, like, let's just figure out what actually works. Let's be honest. Let's try our best to strip away what we want to have work and look at the data, look at the trends, look at what people want, and truly ask, what's the best way to solve a problem? What's the best way to add value? What's the best way to be helpful? So that's what seeking truth means to us here at Halda, is, whether it's a piece of our technology or a certain approach or the way we're going about interacting with students, we always want to be seeking truth around how can I be the most helpful possible in that situation. And we just believe that when human beings in general do this in their lives, they find more success, right? And when organizations can do that and not politic and not like have an ego about something, and so it's unquestionable, that's how you can really make progress. So anyway, probably not your short version, Angela, but that's where the idea of seeking truth really comes from.
I think that's perfect, and it's great framing for this conversation, because we're hoping to help all of you seek some truth around some of the things that you're seeing in the market. So before we dive into our questions and a quick poll for all of you, just some really brief housekeeping. Everyone always asks, yes, the webinar is being recorded. We will be sending the recording to you tomorrow via email. The chat, some of you have found, but if you haven't, it's on the right side of your screen. They are on both the QA and the chat. Feel free to drop questions, comments, concerns into either one, and I will be moderating. I'll be keeping an eye on that so that we can get those answered either in real time or at the end. And now it is time for our little poll, which will launch in just a few seconds. I'm very anxious to see the answers to this question. All right, the poll has launched. Well, let's see what we've got. I know that no one is going to say 0. So someone has to say something. Maybe people are afraid to share. Too many people are in the more than 15 category. I bet that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Thank you to our first voter. What else have we got?
We may have commuters too. If you're commuting and driving a car,
if you're doing that or multitasking, we know people multitask. We don't want you to do that. Okay, so we're gonna go with, here we go. 1 to 5. So we've got some on the high-ish side, some on the low-ish side. Okay. No one with more than 15 though, so that's good news. Creeping up on 1 to 5. I'll give us one more second, and then we'll get into our questions. Okay, I am closing the poll. And we're going to move our deck back onto the stage. So that was very interesting. So now we're going to get into the sort of conversational piece. And this is this is an interesting section to kick us off. It's a combination of talking through why some traditional tactics are not necessarily moving the needle, and also some new AI solutions that are not necessarily meeting expectations in the way that institutions hope for. And Dallin, Austen, based on your work both on our product, but also just conversations that you're having in the market, what do you think is behind some of the ineffectiveness that we're seeing, not just with traditional tactics, but with some of the AI solutions that are out there?
Yeah. Well, I know Dallin has talked a lot about this, but what's fresh on my mind, and we talked about this the other day in our meeting, but for those listening, we do a lot of interviews with students. And for the last 2 months, myself and our head of product, John Grover, spent about 20 hours just talking with students. And the focus of one of our conversations there was around emails. So all the different emails they receive. And we talked about a lot. There's probably a lot we can share about that. But I think as you talk about kind of traditional tactics, there was this glaring theme that came out across all of these different students. And it was about how they engage with communications from schools. And what they were telling us was after 1 or 2 emails, they could easily recall off the top of their head the institutions that they just stopped opening their emails. So you'd ask a student a question, you say, hey, can you tell us about a school where their communications were particularly memorable? And what was fascinating is students had a really, really hard time bringing up the schools that had great communications, the ones that resonated with them, right? Of course, there's 1 or 2, and a lot of it went to like really creative print pieces, things like that. But they were able to easily identify the schools that did a really bad job of communicating with them. And the theme of it is that students were expecting value when they received a communication. And what they were quickly learning and why they stopped opening or looking at emails is they realized that institutions were not providing them value for where they were in the funnel stage. And so it's almost like you're receiving all these communications and I want valuable information that's relevant to me and what I've told you and where I'm at. And I know after 1 or 2 emails, you are not going to provide me value and I'm going to move on with my time. And so I think there's this expectation of give me value. Give me value about what I need to know about your institution. And I think, traditional tactics, I think, are falling short of meeting that expectations that students have for them to give you their attention.
Well, I think part of the reason why they're starting to fall short, and it's probably been, a long-term slide, a long-term decline, is that the situation on the ground has changed. When email marketing first became a thing, I don't even know how long ago that would have been, 15 years ago, where it was really ramping up and becoming a productive channel and so cheap, right? Because I just need to know the email and I can send away, especially in the early days. It was new and people didn't quite understand what mail merge was, and every email felt individual. And so that's definitely not the case today, right? Like that it's been used so broadly and so much that everybody knows what it is, right? In terms of these general email blasts. I think the other thing is that the social dynamic has changed. What do I mean by that? I mean that for the last 50 years, it's been like a default yes, default huge value. Like no one's going to question the assumption of you should go to college. Like absolutely. And so in that world, the pricing, there's this concept in sales called pricing, meaning who is the prize? What is the prize? Who's chasing who? Historically, it's been students chasing schools. please pay attention to me. I'm worth your time. I'm worth your attention. I'm worth being accepted. Please accept me. And I think to varying degrees, right? But more than ever before in the past, that social paradigm has changed to where now the ones that can sometimes feel really needy is actually the school saying, student, please pay attention to me. Please, 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 please. And so ironically, I was on campus with a university about 3 or 4 months ago, and they opened up their Slate CRM, or talking us through their approach, and they showed, check out this timeline, and it was pop, 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 all these little blue dots of all the email communications that had been sent. And then there was one like with a different color. I don't remember which one, and I'm colorblind, full disclosure. But there's this one that had a different type of dot where there's like, oh, what is that one? Oh, that means they opened it. And we're like, oh, well, why? So all these other ones, they weren't open? No. Is that a problem? No. I like to just make sure I'm covering my bases. I like to know that nice comfort blanket that stuff's going out. There's actually no care from this administrator at all as to whether or not it was adding value, like you're talking about, Austen, to the student, as long as it's getting out there. But man, I think that lots of times that you're doing more damage than good. I think there's definitely a world where it's like, stay consistent, stay top of mind. You need consistent communication. But man, what are you sending? How are you sending it? Why are you sending it? How are you connecting? How are you adding values? Is just crucial.
I think that actually connects really well to the agentic AI piece, because we've been talking about this a little bit internally as well, where in some ways the spam that students have been receiving over email and direct mail is now being transferred to agents in some ways, where it's like, we, from sending out a ton of direct mail brochures, flyers, all of the things, and filling up their inboxes, now we're spamming them in a new and different way. And Dallin made the very good point of really trying to think through whose problem you're trying to solve, right? And I'd love for you to talk more about that, because I think it's a point that really resonated with me as we think about some of the new tools that are constantly coming out in our space, and there's a lot of noise and a lot of pressure. Everybody wants to save time. Everybody wants to save budget. But there's this delicate dance that we need to be thinking about, where it's not just about us, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'll take you on a little journey through time. Lance and I started working together in 2017. In 2018, and at first it was just like a marketing agency that we were running. And we knew that we wanted to build a product. We wanted to build something more unique and more differentiable than just marketing services. It's a tough business. There's people that do really well at it. But we were more product people. And so at the time, if you rewind to 2018, you may remember there was like a lot of excitement, at least in tech, around augmented reality. And there's this company, as you look at the way that OpenAI and Anthropic and some of these guys are raising money, it's going to pale in comparison. But back then there was this company called Magic Leap. And Magic Leap was building augmented reality headset. It actually looks a ton like the Apple Vision Pro, but it was like way before that got released. They raised $1 billion. And at the time, like raising $1 billion for a tech firm was just crazy. So like we were so excited about augmented reality. We're like, oh my gosh, think about it. And like we were super enamored with it. And so we started to build this product for like an augmented reality portal. And we thought, oh man, what if we could do a day in the life of a student? And the other big advance was Apple started to enable you to do augmented reality just with the natural hardware on your phone. So you don't need a special app or anything. It's just like normal stuff through the browser. So we're like, okay, the technology is here. We can do it. And it's so cool. Like create a portal, walk through it. You're on campus. It's incredible. And so we ran around trying to sell that. Well, we learned a really, really important lesson in that whole process. We were successful. We did a few. I bet we could even actually find some of these original 360 videos that we did still on YouTube today for a few brands, for a few schools. But here was the problem. We were so enamored with the technology that what we did is like, I'm in love with this technology, so I'm going to go out and try and find problems to solve with it. right? And so this is speaking more from like someone who builds technology. It's a backwards approach. When we started to build Halda, we didn't start with any technology at all. Not at all. We started with a deep understanding of a problem. And then you apply the best technology that you can to solve that problem. It's nuanced, right? It's like, oh, I love this technology. I'm going to solve problems with it. Feels similar to, I really understand this problem and I'm going to bring in the best technology. But in reality, it makes all the difference in the world. Without deep empathy for the problem you're trying to solve, you're just not going to solve it well, right? Because all of a sudden, if your priority is this technology that you worship, and you're trying to fit problems into that technology, you're always going to have a little bit of square peg round hole, because your priority is the technology, not the actual problem. So I want to bring this into, Angela, and you alluded to this, and I'd love both of your reactions to this. But let's dig into like some of the early AI adoption that we've seen in colleges and universities. I was talking to another administrator who said, I have 170,000 students that need phone calls. Before I would hire a call center. Now I'm hiring AI to make all those outbound phone calls to all these students. And I love it. You spend a bunch of money on it. I feel great. What problem was that administrator solving with that purchase and application of technology? Was he solving the student problem, or was he solving his own problem? Maybe this is controversial. I think if we're honest with ourselves, everyone can see it in their work. That administrator, and I think a lot of times this happens in our industry, that administrator was solving a cover your ass problem, CYA. These are two different people, but it was similar to the first story I told you of, like, I just like all those little blue dots saying something's going on. Well, what is that really saying? I want to be able to show my superiors I'm doing things, I'm busy, I'm getting after it. You're solving a CYA problem. You got to solve the student's problem. So we started this by talking values. A huge value for us is when the student wins, everyone wins. And so you've got to not use AI and think it's the hammer that hits all nails. Like, again, here, you've got to start with a deep empathy for the problem and then backtrack into the best technology to help you solve it. Anyway, I think I've said that like 5,000 times in the last like 2 minutes. Thanks, Dal. You made your point. Anyway, I would love both of your reactions to that.
But I think that story reminds me of 8 months ago. I mean, people in our space were launching agentic phone solutions. And we said, hey, we should launch one. Right. Yeah. And we launched ours. And I think, I remember conversations going back and forth of, do we need to have this as an outbound tool? Should we be sending AI calls to students? And, we ultimately made the decision, like, actually, let's just make it request driven. And let's let students tell us which channel they want, right? Do they want to talk over SMS or phone or a web chat? And we pulled the numbers yesterday, right? When you look at which modality students are choosing for our own phone agent, it's less than 6% of students, when presented with, I want to engage with this school, an AI tool with this school, whether it's an SMS agent, a phone agent, a really intelligent website chat experience, less than 6% choose phone, right? Yeah. So I think students are telling you, like, I don't want to talk on the phone when I even get to choose it, let alone having an unsolicited call, right? And I think that for us was really eye-opening of, it's really flashy. I think they demo really well, right?
It's a fun thing to demo. Well, but to your point, Austen, for those 6%, it is helpful. And it is amazing. Yeah. It is like this great thing. And I think that's what's so hard about this, is that it's like one of these scenarios where it's a little bit like ADA compliance, right? Where it's like you want to be accessible, right? But the core to me, I think that we're discovering is its optionality, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'll stick with ADA. If you need to zoom in 700% to read the screen, I want to make sure you have a good experience doing it, right? But if you don't need to, you still need to have a good experience. So I think it's the same thing here. If you want a phone call, I want you to be able to talk with an AI agent over the phone. But if you don't, and you have a different preference, I want you to also have a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, as you're evaluating your options for meeting your goals, are you asking the right questions?
Yeah.
And those questions shouldn't just be about what's happening inside of your office. I know that that's really, it's hard to kind of put that away because that's the pressure that you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. And again, there's so much noise in the market telling you that these are the things that you should be buying and these are going to solve all of your problems. But you have to make sure that the student's voice is part of making those decisions. And at this point, there is enough data out there to tell you what types of AI tools students respond well to, what they find to be helpful, what they actually want. Don't lose sight of that. You're making so many decisions about your enrollment marketing plan that are driven by data, and that type of data is really important too. So try not to believe as much of the hype and really seek some truth around what is it that students are actually asking for, and what's the configuration of tools that's going to help me move them along, and what can be a really daunting and complicated process.
Yeah, I love that. Austen, I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit because we didn't necessarily talk about this question, but again, this is a conversation. We'll just see where it takes us. Can you think of examples, again, around this idea of seeking truth around what are the best ways to solve problems versus how can I use my favorite technology in every way possible? We're an AI company, right? So it's sort of funny for us to be like, oh, AI is not the answer for everything. Can you give it an example or two where maybe in developing our product suite, you've actually pumped the brakes on AI to say, hey, we should do this with AI. And you said, should we though?
Oh,
There might be a better way. Can you think of any examples of that?
yeah. Well, I just want to say this is not the first time you put me on the spot.
It's a hostile work environment, guys.
The easiest question you put me on the spot with. Yeah, it's so funny because I think I expected when I came to Halda with a name like Halda.ai, it would be AI everything all the time. It's like, yes, this is the ultimate fix, right? What I've been surprised about is, especially within the product and engineering team, of how often we're asking the question of, we can use AI. Should we use AI in this case? And I actually think emails, and not to harp back on emails, right? But I think like emails is a really good example where, and for people listening, I'm sure you're using current AI tooling, ChatGPT, to help you write your emails, right? Like generative AI is it is such an easy use case, I think, for generative AI tools. And I think we started asking the question of, because we can send an AI generated email using the same data that an institution is using today in a merge field, let's say in Slate, for example, should we do that? And the question is, because we can do it, does it provide any more value to the student?
Let's lift that quote from the guy in Jurassic Park. You were so excited that you could do it. You never stopped to think, should you do it?
Should you do it? Yeah. And this is where I think, I don't want to say that we've pumped the brakes, but I think we've slowed down a bit to think about what is our approach. Because, in some parts of our app, we are sending AI generated emails, right? We have comeback emails. They're behaviorally triggered, active and passive behaviors. But from a scale perspective, right, it's not like hundreds of thousands of emails, right? They're kind of targeted, timely emails based off certain behaviors and largely meant to drive you back to the website. So we started saying, well, if we can do it there, can we do it for hundreds of thousands of students, maybe in a search capacity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we asked the question, should we be doing this? We found a partner who said, yeah, we have the same question. Here's 300,000 student names. Let's run a complete A/B test where you take half the names and you send AI generated emails to them. We will take half the names and we will send our campus written emails to them using merge fields. We all have the same data points. And let's just see if it performs. Let's see if it's better for the student before we move forward. And so we actually sent the last email out yesterday. It was a 3-part campaign. And I think what we found is it more efficient? Yeah, certainly, right? So if I think we're thinking about the administrator's problem, yeah, definitely more efficient. We're able to do this very, very quickly. On the student side, in some areas, it was better for the student, right? I mean, we were seeing open rates way higher than the campus written emails. But in other areas, we weren't seeing a huge lift. And so I think that has brought us back to the drawing board to say, okay, well, we can send an AI generated email. Is the way we're doing it right? And do we now need to rethink about just individualizing versus how do we use AI not to just write the email, but to figure out what is the best email for the student? And is that a better application of AI in this case to have a better outcome for the student? And so, yeah, we can't wait to pilot again with a new approach before we ever kind of go out to the market with this.
Yeah. And I think that what's so important there is just like having it be data driven. I think that so often in our decisions in organizations, decisions are made largely by like political capital, right? Who has the biggest sway? Who has the final say? But if you have a team that can all be focused on knowing the problem that you want to solve and for whom you're solving it, and there's alignment on that, and then you let data be your guide, it's pretty hard to go wrong at that point. So I want to like double click on this idea of like student preference and choice and like how that plays into an AI application. Because in that same study, Austin, I remember you talking about how when we're doing the interviews with students, they were saying, man, if it's an AI email, that's great. Just make sure that you disclose it. But then you're saying something about preferences in terms of like when they respond and like what that experience is like.
Oh, yeah. So we're interviewing these students. And by the way, I think for context here, like these were 20 students, right? So this is we're getting some insights. This isn't like a statistically significant study for those listening. But we were asking students like, hey, what are your thoughts about receiving an AI generated email? So we started with email. And generally speaking, students said, yeah, that's fine with me. But there were a couple caveats, right? The first one was, hey, we're actually really savvy and we can identify AI generated content. Now, some students could say, I can identify AI generated content because of X, Y, and Z. Other students were like, there's a spidey sense. My hairs are sticking up on the back of my neck. I can't put my finger on it, but I know it's AI generated, right? So they're pretty savvy. And so what they told us is, it's AI generated? Like, just be honest. Tell us it's AI generated, and I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
So when they would say that, we would then ask a follow-up question of, okay, so let's imagine you get that email, for example, and you reply to that email, and all of a sudden you're talking to an AI agent. The mood changed completely. It was, whoa. I wanted to reply to a human. Or I need to know at any point in that process that I have this human off-ramp that I can use at any time. And for us, that was really surprising of like, I'm good in certain situations. I'm really comfortable with AI. In other situations, I need a human in the loop. And so that was for us surprising of like, okay, we can use AI, but it's actually not good in all cases. And students are telling us very clearly that human part of this process should not go away. They highly valued that.
Well, and I think that this blend of like optionality should be good news for everyone in the industry, because like the biggest thing that we hear on campus in terms of AI hesitancy is largely we don't want to lose the human touch, right? And what we hear from students at the same time is we also don't want to lose the human touch, right? But all the while they are also saying, but if I can get fast, immediate, personalized answers in these categories, that's a better experience, right? So it's like this tricky dance, once again, of saying like, how do you make sure that you are giving the off-ramps or the options or the channels that they want and giving them that agency to pick and choose all the time?
Well, I think our SMS agent is a good example. So, we have hundreds of conversations a day with our SMS agent. And I think we've made a pretty conscious decision of our agent is not meant to design or is not designed, I think, to talk about conversations that should clearly be had with a human. And so students, if you read through the log, students will say, hey, I have this really particular question about, I'm admitted, I'm between the two schools and I got $5,000 at this other school. Can you help me? What should I do? And I see those come in, I'm going, agent, do the right thing. Do the right thing. And it'll stop and say, hey, that's a great question. And I think you should talk to someone over in financial aid about that question. Can I transfer you over? Right. And I think that there is I think we've tried to strike that balance of we want to be really helpful, but there's a limit to how helpful an agent can be, and where that human intelligence has to take over, and where they can have empathy in this conversation that AI, at least at this point, just isn't equipped to.
Yep. Yeah.
I actually have a great question from the audience about differences between how undergraduates and graduate students interact with AI tools. So the question is, have you seen documented studies that show whether undergraduates interact the same way or differently with graduate students? I recruit for grad programs and find a lot of stats and other studies document prospective undergrad behavior. Dallin, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. Well, in general, to be honest, I don't know that I've looked at segmented data between those two groups. We've implemented our systems for using agentic interactions across grad and undergrad both. So Austen, you might have more segmented data for this. Here's one thing that I'll point to. We partner with NAGAP every year to do a research study, and we're adapting it a little bit this year. In the past, it's been more about general admissions expectations, what types of marketing are the most helpful, et cetera. But this year, it's going to be specifically around AI adoption and AI communication preferences. So for I think it's Taryn that asked that question. Taryn, what we'll be putting in there in this study that we'll have ready for the conference in April, I know it's still a little ways out, is a pretty deep dive on graduate specific research and a lot of data from our app that will answer your question in a pretty robust way. So we are working on a grad specific research project right now. Austen, any color you can add just in terms of what's going on right now with our accounts?
Oh my God, I should have pulled that data before we had this conversation. I can speak anecdotally. So we've launched, well, I'll say two things, right? So before we ever built any of these agent solutions, we put out a poll. We had about 1,200 students respond. And those students who responded were across undergraduate and graduate. And the question was would you interact with AI agents? And if so, over which channel? And we had very positive responses to that survey across both graduate and undergraduate populations, which led us to help to build these solutions. Anecdotally, we have launched, I think it's between 15 and 20 partners right now with phone, SMS, and email solutions. And about half of those are grad only. They've only launched grad. And we are seeing about the same level of interaction with those that we are on the undergraduate side. I think the one thing that's common across both is, and this is probably unsurprising for anyone listening, SMS across both undergraduate and grad is far and away the preferred channel. Yes. So I think we expected maybe an older population may prefer to hop on the phone. That is certainly not the case. SMS is the winner across both of those.
Yeah. Yep. Hands down. And it shouldn't be too surprising. I'm, again, referencing my age. I'm getting a little older, but SMS, I think if anything, your current grad population is probably liking SMS even more than potentially your undergrads. Because it seems like kids these days, they're only sending each other Instagram DMs or whatever.
Yeah. Snaps.
Yeah.
Snapchat,
they
snaps,
use completely different messaging channels. I mean, we support WhatsApp. Usually we talk about it a lot more for international, but
I think the other thing down too is when you look at when people are using these tools is really interesting. So for undergraduates using these tools, 70% are using them after hours. And sometimes I log on in the morning. I'm like, my gosh, go to bed. Why are you texting at 3 a.m.? Just turn our agent off at that time. But actually, when you look at our grad populations, it actually shifts from after business hours to heavily during the lunch hour. And so
interesting.
It's maybe 40% are after hours, and then 20% are heavily concentrated in this one single window during the day.
Well, so let me point something out there, in terms of rush hour, let's call it, right? If you're not leveraging some of these systems, the danger that you run into is you lose people pretty badly. So this was a story from Spencer, our CTO. His wife was going back to school as an adult learner. It wasn't necessarily a graduate degree, but like a second bachelor's degree. And she was looking at 4 or 5 different schools, and the school, one of the schools that she was looking at, offered text message as a channel, not AI powered, right? Just like a regular SMS tool. And so she like filled out an RFI. She said her preference was for texting. She got a text message, which seemed really good. Like, she's really excited at that point. Like, okay, great, they're engaging. She shot over like 5 questions. Send. Crickets. They actually never texted her back. So, and that's an operational faux pas. But even within like 2 hours of a non-response, she'd moved on. And within a week, she'd actually enrolled in a different interior design program, right? So it was really fascinating just how quickly interest was lost and how quickly she moved on. And so again, like, the last point I'm going to make on optionality, I think it's so important. It's really hard to provide a consistently good experience, an individualized experience to a student, and give them a lot of options. It's not too hard to say, no, everyone has to call me. No, everyone has to email with me. No, everyone has to text with me. And I have one system that can like have a memory, make sure we know who they are, et cetera. It's very, very hard to say, you can visit my website, you can text me, you can call us on the phone, we can exchange emails. And no matter where you go, whether you stay in one channel or you hop between these, et cetera, I will remember you, I will individualize for you, and I will give you an excellent white glove experience. That's hard, right? But that's what we're focused on here at Halda, because like, again, as we solve for the student's problem, not our problem, not like, oh, this is operationally more efficient or easier for us to build, right? Not our problem. For their problem, they want options. And so you've got to have, whether you're working with Halda or someone else, you've got to have a super robust CDP, customer data platform, to where you can sync all the data and all the profiles, and everything references that in order to deploy messaging, right? So that's my last comment with regard to like optionality. I think that's just huge. Like, people hate being restricted in their choices.
Yeah.
I think it's just fundamental in our bones. Like, we want to be able to do things in the way we want to do it. And once again, going back to the pricing idea, in a world where I've got a luxury brand, higher education, it costs too much to not be a luxury brand. We just are, right? All of our brands are these luxury goods. You've got to give a luxury experience, right? Especially in the world where it's like the student is the prize. And also, there's not more names to buy. Before, it's like, oh, I have an inefficient funnel, it's not great, but just dump more in the top, we'll get what we need out the bottom. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. So like, we've got to focus on that experience in our funnel and just making it a mind-blowingly customized experience where you're like, man, this place is the Ritz-Carlton of higher ed. They know me, they're responsive, and I have options. I can call them, I can text them, I can do it with AI, or I can get a hold of a human being. And the good news is I can get hold of a human being because so many of the simple conversations are automated away, right? So
it's a beautiful segue into our section on supporting the whole student experience. But before I jump into that, I do want to make sure that we address one of the questions that came in from Jonathan, which is a really good one, asking about policies around AI security and guidelines that are being created for graduate admissions processes. And this is something that I think everyone should hear. So I wanted to make sure we called it out. I cannot speak to how many policies there are for graduate programs specifically, but the AI and college admissions special interest group through NACAC has a database of institutional AI policies specific to admission that I think you might find to be extremely helpful. So we'll include a link to that in the follow-up that we send out tomorrow morning. So I just wanted to make sure everybody heard that. I know that policy development is a really, really big topic as we're talking about using all these tools. So I wanted to make sure that everybody on the call today knows there's a great resource out there, and we're happy to share that with you tomorrow.
And then I think that just to help everyone be like more, like, continue to be informed buyers, or if you're building inside your institution, builders of this technology, one of the most important security concerns is just how much, if any, it should be 0%, PII is being fed into prompts. That's really the big concern. There was a time when it was unclear whether or not these big LLM providers were going to be using data submitted to improve their general models. That was like a big conversation about a year ago. And if you've been following things, you should know at this point that there are really strong, good guidelines within and policies from the LLM providers themselves that, like, if you're on a paid account, if you're using an API, we're not using any of that data to improve the general models. Like, that conversation that happens is not going to pop up in a conversation across the world because it just entered the ethosphere of our LLM. Not going to happen, right? So, like, there's way more clear guardrails out of the box from that perspective. And then the key thing that these platforms cannot control is, like, what do people put into the prompts, right? So, like, as we're developing our technology, we're always separating and anonymizing the prompt so that there's so those stay in completely separate databases, and you keep it really clean. So whatever systems you might be building in-house, or if you're working with a third party, that's, I think at this point, just the one piece to kick the tires on. If they're a good shop, they'll be able to answer that well. They'll be able to show you how they do it, right? But that's the real thing, is, like, you cannot submit the PII, the personally identifiable information, with the prompt that you're trying to get, content out of. Austen, is there anything else you'd add to that?
No, we do that here, and I think it's a great practice, and it's a good question to ask of many of your vendors.
That's perfect. So me being the ruthless timekeeper, I think we've got time for a couple more questions. I know, it's already 2:47. I know. So I want to make sure that we give folks time for open Q&A. But before I do that, actually, Dallin and Austen, I think you can both cover this. But can you talk more about, with everything that we said about the state of the union, so to speak, can you talk about how at Halda we're thinking about supporting institutions across multiple funnel stages so that they can provide that more holistic experience for prospective students?
Yeah. Austen, you've got deeper domain expertise here, so I'm gonna paint a broad stroke, and do you want to just actually, like, make it interesting?
I'm happy to. Yeah, I'll let you start.
So this goes back a little bit to, like, what Angela was saying about when I got on my little soapbox with regard to a CDP. As much as I want to say that, like, Halda invented this playbook, we didn't. Like, if you look at the way that Netflix operates, the way that Amazon operates, the way that Spotify operates, I think Spotify actually does it the best for me in terms of, like, understanding what type of music I like and recommending the right music to me. This has been a playbook for the largest tech organizations in the world, right? And what we're doing is democratizing it a little bit. But as you think about the whole student experience, I think what we've learned is that the more helpful you can be to a student, the more affinity you'll win. And you can't be helpful to someone truly if you don't know anything about them. And historically, I think we've been afraid to ask too much about them because we weren't equipped to use that in any of our communications down the road. And that actually is worse. Like, tell me what your biggest concern is, and I'm never going to talk about that again. Right? It's like, that was dumb. That was net negative on that relationship, right? So we've been a little bit afraid, and we have these, like, generic RFIs that are just, like, such transactional, easy info that, of course, we can use, or that we just need to log away somewhere. So when it comes to, like, supporting the whole student experience, oddly enough, it just boils down to boring. This is gonna be really boring. It boils down to having really great data architecture. It boils down to that really strong CDP that you can say, I can actively build a profile around this individual with not information I've like purchased, but, like, information they're volunteering to me and opting into because I'm offering value. And every time I offer value, they give more info because they know I'll give you more value. Once you solve that problem, that foundational problem, now it just becomes a matter of targeting moments and adding channels so that you can be present at every juncture that's important in their journey. with, I'm going to use this word again, options, right? You're here on my website. I want to be here with you and make sure you get individualized, personalized help. You're in your inbox. I want to be here with you. You're walking to and from classes. You want to text. I want to be here with you, not independently, but I don't mean when I say independently, I mean not in a siloed channel. It has to be a connected channel. It has to be a context-aware channel because I'm going to use lots of different tools at different times. And so my advice on this is to say, as you're building toward an AI future, think really carefully about the platforms you're building on. Because if you have like a siloed chatbot for your website and a different SMS tool over here and a different CMS tool to do the website there, they're not going to talk to each other. And no student that we've ever observed anywhere only uses one channel. It's silly to believe that. So you've got to like zoom out, think about the system, and build something that can truly synchronize and bring all of those channels into harmony and help a student feel seen at anywhere they choose to go.
Yeah. Well, I think even going back to the conversation of like agents, I mean, I see in the market, like it's your agent for this, for financial aid, it's your agent for inquiries, your agent for.
Oh, thank you.
And what I think is like your point about data, it's a really good one, right? I think with a really good data architecture, I mean, what we're seeing from student data on the website, paired with some really key data coming out of the CRM, we can have one tool that supports students at every funnel stage. So if we think about an SMS conversation, if we know you've already applied and you're asking questions, our agent's going to say, or we know you're admitted, for example, and you're having an SMS conversation. Well, it's the same agent that's going to say, hey, can I help you submit that deposit? What information can I get you that would help get to you that would help you deposit, right? That same agent could be having a conversation with an inquiry who hasn't applied yet, and we know that. And so that conversation is different. It's the same tool, but because we can feed in all the data that we have under the scenes, that same tool can apply to every student at every funnel stage because of really good data architecture under the scenes. So I completely support what Dallin is saying. And so that data goes a long way for helping students make that decision, whichever conversion point they're in. Let's help them get to the next stage if it's right for them.
Well, and in an age where I haven't talked to a single school in the last 18 months, I think, that has gotten on the phone and said, Dallin, great news. We just got $500,000 more in our budget, and my goals stayed the same. In fact, they actually expect less of me. And they gave me a 4-week trip to the Bahamas just because they love me so much. I mean, of course, there's some hyperbole there, but every school is under budget pressure, under enrollment pressure, bigger goals, fewer resources. So if you're listening to this and that's you, this talk track should be a breath of fresh air, because what this means in reality is there are tools out there now where you can actually consolidate vendors you work with. You can consolidate your tech stack because it's actually strategically crucial you do so. And now, thanks to the type of technology that can automatically coordinate this type of outreach, you can have better student experiences while actually reducing the manual effort and the budget. It's been really fascinating to see how, as you orchestrate all these channels, you get better outcomes for less money and less effort. And I know it's like, I had somebody the other day who's like, you're selling a pipe dream. Like, I promise you I'm not. Like, we've got the data, we've got the experience and the implementations. I'm not saying no work. It still takes work, right? But like, as you think about your system from this perspective, I think, we're just seeing time and again, it's like this wonderful tailwind and answer to a lot of the struggle and a lot of the challenges we're seeing in the market.
I think that's a great place for us to pause.
What?
And I know we've got 6 minutes left. We
I
gotta
have
give
a whole
people
folder of stuff I want to talk about still.
we have to give folks an opportunity to ask some questions. So in the next few minutes, if you have questions, please drop them into the chat or the Q&A bubble, whichever your finger happens to be closest to at the moment, and we will happily answer them.
While we wait, I've got a question. Circling back to this top, Austen, and I promise we'll stop this immediately if we get a question coming in. Like, I'll just cut off mid-sentence. In the research you're doing with students, was there ever a time where they said, in this moment, AI is absolutely never the answer? Like, I don't even want to sniff it or smell it. Like, this has to be human.
No, not explicitly, right? I think that they were hinting at, as they got kind of further through the enrollment process, particularly the undergraduate students we talked to. I think that is where they were valuing more of a human connection than AI tooling. I think because we talked to them a lot about like, hey, show me your inbox. Just pull up your email inbox. And they would show us all their search emails. And that's where they're like, yeah, that's fine. Like if you can deliver value to me and help keep me engaged up here, that's fine. But as I go through the process, that is really where I want to talk to more humans. I think interestingly, one of the areas where students were not interested in AI is we would show them examples. And one of the examples was we took all the data about a student and we generated an image for them saying, hey, you're interested in biology, business, and ROTC. Our mascot, I think we use like the University of Montana as an example, like Monty, our mascot, also loves these things. That turned students off completely.
Really?
And by the way, good for them, because they were saying, you know what, I have artist peers, and this type of stuff devalues their creative work.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so it was a really interesting line that they drew around.
Wow.
Artwork, not okay. They were good with content, but you crossed that line, and that was a big turnoff for them.
Well, when you say content, you mean like text?
Words. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's such an interesting distinction. I think that's why it's so important to keep asking questions of students. So I have an answer to my question. It's not so much from the student perspective, but from an administrator perspective. So this is just something else for people to keep in mind. Historically, up until 2021, when ChatGPT came onto the scene and was released, any software you built is what you would call deterministic code. What that means is if you told it, do A, then B, then C, it will always do A, then B, then C. Always, right? With AI, it's not deterministic. So that means two things. It can do way more things than deterministic code can, but it also means it can be naughty. It can just straight up disobey you because you're relinquishing some of your control over it. So the reason why I bring this up is that when you're considering AI implementations, it's really, really important that you sit around with your administration and your team and say, like, how comfortable are we in the situations where we're considering deploying AI? How comfortable are we with, let's say, 3% variability in what gets put out there? Meaning 3% of the time, it might produce some janky, weird response, or maybe not even janky, weird, like not quite right response. Are we okay with that? Or does it have to be exactly these words in exactly this order every single time? Like, I just think it's healthy to do some truth seeking with your organization of like, how comfortable are we with variability? Because that is a huge barometer on like how successful you'll be at implementing AI systems. Because what you do in AI, you say, you're starting at A and I want you to get to C. You decide what B is, right? And sometimes my C has a little bit of a squiggle. It's still a C, but there's a little squiggle in it. And sometimes it's capitalized and sometimes it's a lowercase c. Like there's just some variability. So as you consider that, I think another thing to just kick tires on is A, have that conversation internally, know what your level of comfort is as an organization. And then B, talk with the group that you're working with about steerability, about saying, how can I gain control? What type of evals do you have on your AI? How will I know what it's doing? Because I can't check every email. The emails are generated and each is going to be a little different. I cannot read the 130,000 emails that you want to send. And you can't, right? So you have to, again, think on a more systems basis, have some good evaluation tools to keep things in order, have good reports or flags, have like a double check system that like double checks things systematically before they go out. So again, get to know what your comfort level is with variability as an organization, and then talk with whomever you're working with about evaluation, steerability. How do I make sure that to as much of an extent as possible, I can give some guidance here, right? Because there's one-off little quick pop-up companies that we have seen and will continue to see of like, oh, I made this thing, it's so cool, and like the demo's amazing. But like at scale, without those systems in place, you run into a lot of issues. So anyway, that would be my other piece of advice. Like if you're a shop, if you're a group that says in these instances, it has to be absolutely precisely the way that I'm writing it. That's not a job for AI. It's just not, right? That is a job for deterministic code, a strict template, mail merge, exactness, right? And so what might that be? Financial aid packages. Those probably need to be communicated in a very, very specific way to keep you in compliance. So I think that's just the other piece of advice I would give is like, do some internal truth seeking around your comfort levels, and then have a consideration of like that mix between like rigidity with creativity, right? Because like I think we've gotten our systems to the point where we have great evaluation tools, we have great ways to flag things, we have really good steerability to make sure we're talking in brand voice, etc. But there is variability. This sentence might come first, and in another one, that sentence comes first, or it's phrased slightly differently. Like that's what you're signing up for in exchange for the flexibility to individualize everything on the fly at scale. So last soapbox. How many soapboxes did I have?
I didn't count. Maybe someone in the audience was paying attention and can send us a tally. But that is a great place for us to wrap. For the folks that held on, because we went just 1 minute over, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us this afternoon for this session. As I mentioned, we will be sending this recording to your inboxes tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. We'll also include a link to the survey that we did with NAGAP, just in case you find it to be helpful, even though it's not AI specific. It'll also give you a little bit of a teaser for what we'll be doing next year. And then we'll also include a link to that AICA document that I shared with all of those admissions AI policies to help you all out, since that is a big topic and we want to make sure that we provide as many resources as we can to help you all do your work even better. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next month at our next webinar. Dallin, Austen, thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Adios. Fun talking to you guys. See you later.
See ya.